When the narcissist finally realizes that you have outgrown them, that you have broken free from their manipulative grip, something inside of them begins to shatter. To the outside world, the narcissist often appears confident, dominant, even untouchable. But behind the mask lies a fragile self-image that depends entirely on how much control they can exert over others. Their sense of worth is not grounded in authentic self-acceptance, but in the ability to dominate, exploit, and manipulate the people around them. For months, maybe years, they conditioned you to believe that you needed their validation, that their approval defined your identity, and that your life could not hold meaning without their presence. They thrived on this dependence, feeding their ego with every ounce of your attention. But when the day comes that you no longer play their game, when you stand firm in your independence and choose your peace over their chaos, the narcissist faces what is, for them, the most painful truth. They have lost, and this loss is unlike any ordinary disappointment. For a narcissist, losing their grip on you feels like losing a piece of themselves. Because their entire existence depends on controlling narratives and being at the center of others' lives. Watching you detach, it becomes unbearable. You are no longer a reliable source of supply, that constant flow of attention, energy, and emotional reaction they once extracted from you. This realization shakes the very foundation of their identity. At first, their reaction is often denial. The narcissist cannot accept that you have truly broken free, so they attempt to lure you back with familiar tactics. They may suddenly become sweet, apologetic, or even affectionate, offering words they never gave you before, promising change, painting a picture of a better future together. They do this not out of love, but out of fear of losing their source of power. It is what many psychologists call hoovering, a desperate attempt to suck you back into the cycle of manipulation. If that fails, they may switch to anger. You will see the rage that lives beneath the surface of their mask. Insults, blame, guilt-tripping, all unleashed in an effort to destabilize you. They may accuse you of being selfish, ungrateful, or disloyal. They might twist the narrative, painting themselves as the victim and you as the betrayer. Why? Because the narcissist cannot tolerate the idea that you had the strength to leave, that you could reject their dominance. Your independence exposes their weakness, and nothing wounds them more than being reminded that their control was never absolute. But here is where your victory becomes most powerful. You no longer react the way you once did. In the past, their words would have pierced your heart, making you doubt yourself, pulling you back into the cycle. Now, you see the truth. You recognize manipulation for what it is. You understand that their attacks are not a reflection of your worth, but of their desperation. And this shift in awareness is what makes you untouchable. The narcissist's downfall lies in the silence of your indifference. They crave your reaction, whether positive or negative. It does not matter, as long as you are still entangled in their emotional web. But when you refuse to engage, when you walk away with dignity and calm, you rob them of their lifeline. The more you withhold your attention, the weaker they become in your world. Their empire of control crumbles, not because you fought back loudly, but because you simply stopped playing. Psychologically, this moment is significant. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." By breaking free from the narcissist, you are making conscious what once was hidden. You are illuminating the patterns of abuse, the cycles of manipulation, and the ways in which you were unconsciously pulled into their shadow. This awareness is what allows you to transform. You are no longer trapped in the fate they wrote for you. You are authoring your own destiny, and that transformation is not only external but internal. You begin to reclaim parts of yourself that were buried under their dominance. Perhaps you rediscover your creativity, your confidence, your sense of joy. You start setting boundaries, not only with the narcissist but with everyone around you. You learn that your worth is intrinsic, not dependent on someone else's approval. And with every step you take toward this new life, the narcissist feels the weight of their loss more deeply. Affirm this within yourself. I am no longer a prisoner of manipulation. My value is not defined by others. I have chosen my peace, and that choice is my ultimate victory. These affirmations are not empty words. They are powerful reminders that anchor you in your truth. They shield you from falling back into the old patterns and empower you to continue walking forward. It is also important to understand that the narcissist may never acknowledge your strength. Do not expect validation from them. To admit your victory would mean admitting their defeat, and their fragile ego cannot withstand that truth. But the absence of their acknowledgement does not diminish your triumph. In fact, it makes it even greater, because your win is not dependent on their recognition. It is evident in your freedom, in your silence, in the life you are building without them. And here lies the deeper truth. Your victory is not really over them. It is over the part of yourself that once believed their lies, that once tolerated their abuse, that once allowed their shadow to dim your light. You have transcended not just their control but your own limitations. That is why the narcissist's loss is so profound, because they no longer control the narrative, and you no longer need their story to define your life. The more you embody this new strength, the more they fade into irrelevance. They may try again, they may circle back, but their grip is gone. And though they may never admit it, in their private moments, they feel the sting of having underestimated you. They thought you would never leave, never grow, never rise above, but you did. And that silent proof is your greatest revenge. When the narcissist finally sees that you have risen above their control, they begin to unravel internally. This unraveling is not visible to the public eye, because a narcissist will do everything in their power to maintain the illusion of control. They will act as if nothing has happened. They will put on the mask of superiority, and they will even pretend that losing you does not affect them at all. But beneath that carefully crafted performance lies panic, fear, and humiliation. Because, for the narcissist, losing their grip on someone they once controlled is equivalent to a collapse of their identity. You must understand, narcissists do not simply lose relationships the way others do. When most people lose someone they care about, they feel sadness, grief, maybe even regret. But for a narcissist, loss is not about emotional connection. It is about the collapse of power. You were never just a partner, a friend, or a family member to them. You were a source of supply, a mirror that reflected their importance, a stage upon which they could perform, a battery from which they could draw energy. Once that supply is gone, their fragile sense of self is exposed. That is why their reactions can be so extreme. Some narcissists will become enraged, attacking you with insults, lies, or smear campaigns. Others will withdraw and attempt to punish you with silence, hoping that their absence will make you crawl back. And some will alternate between love bombing and rage, desperate to see which tactic will pull you back into their orbit. This inconsistency is intentional. It is designed to confuse you and destabilize your emotions, because in your confusion they regain the upper hand. But here is where your clarity becomes your weapon. Once you see the pattern, once you recognize the cycle, you are no longer trapped by it. When they try to lure you back with charm, you understand that it is not genuine love, but manipulation. When they lash out with anger, you recognize that their rage is not proof of your guilt, but evidence of their powerlessness. This perspective gives you the strength to remain calm, even when their behavior becomes chaotic. Carl Jung spoke often about the shadow, the hidden parts of ourselves that we refuse to acknowledge. For the narcissist, their shadow is unbearable. They cannot face their own weakness, their own lack of authentic self-worth, their own dependency on others. So instead, they project it outward. They accuse you of being weak, ungrateful, or dependent, when in reality those accusations are reflections of themselves. This is why their anger when you leave is so intense, because your strength forces them to see what they cannot face within. Yet, what happens to you in this process is even more profound. You are not simply leaving behind a toxic relationship. You are entering into a deeper relationship with yourself. Every step you take away from the narcissist is a step toward reclaiming your inner power. You begin to trust your intuition again, that quiet voice they once taught you to ignore. You begin to rebuild your confidence, brick by brick, as you remember who you were before their shadow clouded your light. And this rebuilding is not a small task. Many people underestimate the recovery process, believing that walking away is the hardest part. But the truth is, walking away is only the beginning. Healing requires patience, self-reflection, and often the courage to face your own wounds. Because while the narcissist exploited your vulnerabilities, those vulnerabilities existed long before they entered your life. Perhaps you had an old wound of abandonment, a longing for approval, or a belief that love must be earned through sacrifice. The narcissist did not create those wounds, but they amplified them. Now, in your healing, you are invited to do what Jung described as individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating all parts of yourself, even the hidden ones. You begin to ask, why did I tolerate that behavior? Why did I believe I was not worthy of more? What within me was searching for someone like them? These are not questions of blame, but of empowerment. Because the more you understand yourself, the less likely you are to ever fall into the same trap again in this stage. Affirmations become more than words. They become declarations of your new identity. Speak them with conviction. I am a whole without anyone else's approval. I am strong enough to protect my boundaries. My past does not define me. My choices today define me. Each time you affirm these truths, you are rewiring the patterns in your mind, building a foundation of self-respect that cannot be shaken by the manipulations of others. And what of the narcissist during this time? They may still attempt to interfere, but their power over you diminishes with every step you take. They will test your boundaries, hoping you will crack. They may try to provoke guilt by saying you abandoned them. They may attempt to smear your reputation, hoping to isolate you. But none of these tactics work in the long run, because their greatest weapon was never their words, it was your belief in those words. Now that you see through them, their weapons are blunt, ineffective, powerless. This is the stage where many survivors of narcissistic abuse discover something unexpected. Compassion. Not the kind of compassion that leads you back into their arms, but the kind that sees clearly without illusion. You recognize that the narcissist is trapped in their own suffering, locked in a cycle they cannot escape without deep something they fiercely resist. You no longer hate them, nor do you excuse them. You simply see them for what they are. And in that clarity, you find peace. This peace is not weakness. It is not giving up. It is the highest form of strength, because it shows that you no longer need revenge, validation, or acknowledgement from them. Your peace itself is proof of your victory. While they continue to fight imaginary battles in their mind, you are free to build a life filled with authenticity, joy, and love that is real. In the end, the narcissist's realization that you have outgrown them is less about what they lose and more about what you gain. They lose control, yes. They lose the ability to manipulate, yes, but you gain something far greater yourself. You gain the freedom to live without fear. You gain the ability to love without conditions. You gain the wisdom to protect your heart without closing it off. And that is a victory no narcissist can ever take away. When the narcissist finally realizes that they no longer occupy space in your mind or heart, they are confronted with the one thing they cannot endure: irrelevance. For a narcissist, being irrelevant is worse than being hated. Hatred, after all, is still an intense form of attention, but indifference. Indifference signals that they no longer matter, that their words and actions have no power to stir you, and this indifference is the clearest sign to them that you have truly won. Think about this. Their entire sense of identity has been built around control. The narcissist needs constant feedback to sustain their fragile self-image, whether it comes in the form of admiration or conflict. As long as you were reacting, they had proof that they were significant in your world. But when your silence replaces your reactions, when your calm presence replaces your desperate attempts to please, they are forced to confront a reality they cannot bear. Their illusion of power has collapsed. This collapse can trigger what psychologists often call narcissistic injury. It is not a simple wound to their pride, it is a profound crack in the foundation of their psyche. Narcissists defend themselves against feelings of inadequacy by creating a false self, a mask of superiority and control. But when someone they once dominated escapes and thrives without them, it punctures the mask, revealing the insecurity and emptiness beneath. To them, this is intolerable, so how do they respond? Some will try to rewrite history. They may tell others that they were the ones who left you, that they were always in control, or that you were never important to them in the first place. This rewriting is not just for the outside world, it is for themselves. They must construct a narrative where they are never defeated, because admitting defeat would mean facing their hidden truth, that they are not as powerful, loved, or admired as they believe. Others may attempt one last desperate push to regain control. They may show up unexpectedly in your life, send you messages, or even stalk your online presence. They may use mutual friends or family members to gather information about you. Every action is a test. They want to see if you will react, if you will acknowledge them, if you will break your silence. But every time you refuse to engage, every time you choose not to respond, you reinforce the truth that you are free. For you, however, this stage is not only about resisting their tactics, it is about continuing your inner transformation. Breaking free from a narcissist is not just an act of escape. It is an act of self-reinvention. You are not simply walking away from someone toxic. You are walking toward a version of yourself that is whole, empowered, and no longer defined by external control. Carl Jung often spoke of individuation as the process of becoming your truest self by integrating the unconscious into consciousness. In your journey, this means bringing to light all the ways you once surrendered your power, not to blame yourself, but to reclaim it. You may realize that you gave too much because you longed to be loved. You may see that you tolerated disrespect because you feared abandonment. These realizations are not weaknesses. They are doorways into deeper self. Once you acknowledge them, you can transform them into strengths. For example, your longing to be loved becomes a recognition that you deserve healthy, unconditional love. Your fear of abandonment becomes a reminder that you can survive and even thrive alone, without depending on toxic connections. Your willingness to sacrifice becomes the foundation for learning boundaries, giving only where there is reciprocity and respect. These lessons reshape your character, not by hardening your heart, but by refining your wisdom. Affirmations can anchor this transformation. Speak them daily, especially when memories of the narcissist resurface. My silence is my strength. I do not need to prove my worth to anyone. I am free from the cycle of manipulation. I choose peace. I choose growth. I choose myself. Each affirmation serves as a shield, protecting you from slipping back into old habits of self-doubt or overgiving. They remind you that your freedom is not just physical distance from the narcissist, but also emotional detachment, a liberation of your mind and spirit. Meanwhile, as you rise, the narcissist faces the reality they cannot escape. You no longer need them. This realization cuts deeper than anything else, because it destroys the illusion of indispensability they carefully built. They may attempt to replace you quickly with someone else, desperate to prove that they are still desirable and powerful. But even if they succeed in finding a new source of supply, deep down they know what they lost. Someone who saw through their mask and still walked away. That is why your strength becomes their greatest torment. They can deceive others, but they cannot erase the fact that you, once under their spell, escaped it. And in their private moments, the moments no one else sees, they feel the sting of defeat. They may never admit it, not even to themselves. but the silence you leave behind echoes louder than any argument could. And here lies the paradox. Your victory is not loud. It is quiet. It does not come from revenge, from proving them wrong, or from trying to expose them. It comes from living well, from reclaiming your life, from finding joy that has nothing to do with them. This is what makes your triumph undeniable, because while they remain stuck in their cycle of illusions, you are free to create a reality grounded in truth. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." That is the essence of your journey. The narcissist may have tried to mold you into a shadow of yourself, dependent on their approval, chained by their narratives. But by breaking free, you step into that privilege. You are not who they said you were. You are not defined by their projection. You are defined by your resilience, your courage, and your willingness to grow. So when the narcissist realizes you have truly overcome them, what happens is this: they are left with their emptiness, while you are left with your wholeness. Their mask cracks, while your authentic self shines brighter. They remain in the shadows of their illusions, while you walk into the light of your truth. And though they may rage, deny, or attempt to rewrite the story, the reality cannot be undone. You have won, not because you defeated them, but because you reclaimed yourself. When the narcissist finally recognizes that you are no longer defined by their presence, they face a crisis that shakes them to their core. It is a crisis not of love, because narcissists do not love in the way most people do, but of identity. Their identity is built upon the illusion of superiority, the illusion of being irreplaceable, and the illusion of control. When you walk away and do not return, when you thrive without their approval, when you smile without needing them, all of those illusions collapse. To the narcissist, your independence is not just a rejection, it is proof that their power was never real. And this proof creates a storm inside of them. They may attempt to conceal it from the world, projecting the same image of confidence and strength, but inside, they are consumed by shame, rage, and envy. Shame, because your departure exposes the emptiness they desperately try to hide. Rage, because they cannot stand the thought that you are happier without them. And envy, because they see in your freedom something they secretly long for but cannot achieve: authenticity. This is the paradox of narcissism. They desire admiration, validation, and power over others, but what they truly lack is self-acceptance. They live in a prison of their own making, bound by the need to maintain their mask at all costs. And when you remove yourself from their game, you hold up a mirror to them, a mirror that reflects the one truth they cannot bear, that their power was an illusion, and their control was fragile. Your victory is not loud. You may not even announce it. You simply live it. Every time you choose not to answer their calls, every time you walk past their provocations with silence, every time you pour your energy into yourself instead of their drama, you reinforce your freedom. And to the narcissist, each one of those small acts is a reminder that they no longer control you. But let's go deeper. Why is this victory so powerful? Because it does not just free you from them, it transforms you from within. When you were entangled with a narcissist, you may have felt constantly anxious, questioning yourself, doubting your worth, walking on eggshells. Your nervous system was on high alert, waiting for the next outburst or manipulation. Over time, this state of hypervigilance became a habit, conditioning your mind and body to live in survival mode. Breaking free disrupts this pattern. At first, the silence may feel strange. You may even feel guilty for not responding, or afraid that choosing yourself is selfish. But slowly, you begin to retrain your mind and body. You breathe more deeply. You notice that your energy is no longer drained. You start to rediscover what peace feels like. This is the stage where healing becomes tangible, when you realize that freedom is not just the absence of their presence, but the restoration of your own inner harmony. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." Escaping the grip of a narcissist forces you to look inside. It forces you to ask hard questions. What wounds made me tolerate this? Why did I accept so little? What part of me believed I did not deserve more? These questions may feel heavy, but they are the very ones that awaken you, because healing is not about blaming yourself. It is about understanding yourself so deeply that no one can ever exploit those wounds again. In this awakening, you begin to reclaim the pieces of yourself that were suppressed. Perhaps you start to laugh again, without fear of being mocked. Perhaps you allow yourself to dream again, without someone dismissing your ambitions. Perhaps you rediscover your creativity, your curiosity, or your passion for life. Each of these rediscoveries is a victory in itself. They are signs that you are no longer surviving, you are living. Affirm this truth within you. I am no longer defined by the wounds of the past. My silence is strength, not weakness. I choose to protect my peace above all else. I am whole, complete, and free. These affirmations may feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you spent years doubting your worth. But the more you speak them, the more they reshape the way you see yourself. They remind you that freedom is not just physical distance, it is the rewriting of your inner story. Meanwhile, the narcissist struggles with a reality they cannot change. They may attempt to replace you with someone else quickly, flaunting the new relationship as proof that they have moved on. But deep down, they know it is only a performance. Because what they crave is not love, it is supply. And while they may find someone new to manipulate, the memory of you walking away will haunt them. It will remind them that their mask is fragile and that there are people who can see through it. This is why your strength is so devastating to them. You did not just leave. You refused to return. You did not just survive. You grew stronger. You did not just break free. You transformed. And this transformation is the one thing they can never take from you. They may lie, they may smear, they may rage, but none of it can undo the reality that you are free and they are trapped. From a Jungian perspective, this is more than just a personal victory. It is an archetypal journey, the hero's journey of confronting the shadow and reclaiming the self. The narcissists represented the shadow in your life, the projection of control, fear, and dependency. By facing that shadow and walking away, you did what Jung described as integrating the unconscious. You became aware of the hidden patterns that once controlled you, and by making them conscious, you transformed them. This is why your story is not only about escape but about awakening. You did not just escape a narcissist, you awakened to yourself. You discovered that your worth was never in their approval, that your peace was never in their control, and that your destiny was never tied to their games. You discovered that your silence, your dignity, and your freedom are louder than any words they could ever speak. And so, when the narcissist realizes that you have outgrown them, what happens is this. They are left chasing illusions, while you walk in truth. They are left clinging to masks, while you live with authenticity. They are left with their emptiness, while you stand in your wholeness. Their defeat is not measured by your revenge, but by your transformation. Because the greatest victory you can achieve is not proving them wrong, it is becoming who you were always meant to be. When the narcissist realizes that you have truly won not by defeating them in a battle of egos, but by transcending their influence and reclaiming your own power, they enter into a psychological state that Carl Jung would describe as a confrontation with their own shadow. This moment is pivotal, because narcissists build their entire sense of identity on illusions, manipulations, and the control they exert over others. When you are no longer available to play the role they assign to you, their constructed identity begins to crumble. To understand what happens next, we must first examine the internal mechanism that drives a narcissist. Their psyche is often dominated by an inflated persona, what Jung would call a mask created to conceal deep feelings of inadequacy, shame, or fear of abandonment. Beneath their grandiosity lies a fragile ego that cannot tolerate authentic intimacy or vulnerability. When you win by detaching, setting boundaries, or thriving independently, you are not simply ending a toxic dynamic, you are exposing the emptiness beneath their facade. The narcissist's initial reaction is usually one of denial. They will refuse to acknowledge your growth and independence, insisting that you are still beneath them. This denial serves as a protective shield, preventing them from facing the truth that you are no longer dependent on their validation. But as time passes and your strength becomes undeniable, denial often transforms into rage. This rage is not necessarily explosive, in the form of shouting or violence. Often, it is expressed through covert tactics, mere campaigns, passive-aggressive remarks, or attempts to sabotage your progress. Jung taught that what we resist persists. By refusing to accept your transformation, the narcissist traps themselves in a cycle of resistance. Their fixation on regaining control over you becomes a mirror reflecting their own lack of self-mastery. Ironically, in their effort to prove they have power over you, they reveal how powerless they are without you. They begin to realize that the battle they thought was external is, in fact, internal. But while the narcissist struggles, you continue to evolve. Each time you choose peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, and self-respect over manipulation, you reinforce the truth that you have outgrown them. This is where your true victory lies, not in destroying the narcissist, but in liberating yourself from the toxic dance. By breaking free, you also break the spell of their illusion at this stage. Many narcissists resort to what psychologists call hoot. Just as a vacuum pulls in everything around it, the narcissist attempts to suck you back into their orbit with promises, apologies, or sudden displays of affection. They may say things like, "I've changed," or "You'll never find anyone who understands you like I do." These are not genuine reflections of growth, but desperate attempts to restore the dynamic where they had control. Jung would warn us here, when we are tempted to return to familiar patterns, we are often confronted by our own shadow, our longing for validation, our fear of loneliness, or our unresolved wounds. Recognizing this temptation is a test of your newfound strength. If you remain firm and refuse to re-enter the cycle, the narcissist faces a devastating realization. You are no longer under their control. This realization is like a crack in their carefully crafted mask. For perhaps the first time, they are forced to confront the truth that their power was never absolute. It was borrowed, sustained only by your willingness to participate. Without your energy, admiration, or attention, their kingdom collapses into dust. Here is where the Jungian concept of individuation comes into play. Individuation is the process of integrating all aspects of the self, the conscious and unconscious, the light and shadow, into a balanced whole. When you separate from the narcissist and embrace your authentic self, you are engaging in individuation. You are integrating the parts of you that once sought approval at any cost, learning instead to validate yourself from within. This transformation not only breaks the narcissist's hold over you but also initiates a journey towards self-mastery. The narcissist, on the other hand, often resists individuation. To confront their shadow would require them to admit their flaws, acknowledge their pain, and accept responsibility for the harm they've caused. For many narcissists, this level of self-awareness is intolerable. Instead, they double down on their illusions, seeking new sources of validation to replace the one they lost. But deep down, they cannot escape the truth. Your victory is proof that their grip is not unbreakable. This is why your growth threatens them so profoundly. It reveals what they fear the most, that they are not indispensable. It shows them that people can, and do, heal from their manipulation. And in a strange way, your liberation offers them a mirror of possibility. If you can break free, they too could face their shadow and transform. Whether they choose to do so is beyond your control. But your example plants a seed of truth that they cannot unsee. Meanwhile, you continue to embody strength. You reclaim your energy, redirect your focus toward growth, and align your life with purpose. Each step forward becomes a silent declaration. You have won by refusing to play the narcissist's game. And as Jung observed, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. That is the essence of your victory, not dominance, not revenge, but authenticity. In this sense, the narcissist's realization is less about you defeating them and more about you reclaiming yourself. It is the moment they see that their illusions cannot bind you, their manipulations cannot break you, and their control cannot define you. And while they may never admit it aloud, deep within they know you have already won.